We're back once again beside the St. Lawrence River here in Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix. The event first moved to a variant of this track back in 1978. It was won by none other than Gilles Villeneuve, the first Canadian to ever win his home race, and in whose honour the circuit would be renamed. It's one of the fastest races of the season here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, with around 60% of this 2.7-mile circuit taken at full throttle. There are 14 corners to navigate, the very last of which has its very own infamous history. Could be the cause of a safety car today. Joining me for today's race once again is Anthony Davidson. Now, I want to ask you about Lando Norris. They're still relatively new to a sport which does have a high learning curve and, of course, little tolerance for mistakes.
That's right, it is a difficult environment to come into. In junior categories, you're competing against drivers with similar levels of experience. But some of these guys in Formula One have been there for over a decade. But I have to say, in this case, it's so far so good.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Lewis Hamilton lines up on pole position, and starting alongside in P2 is Sebastian Vettel. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Bottas, Nico Hülkenberg, and Gasly, Magnussen, Sainz, Butler, and George Russell, Perez, Stroll, Daniel Ricciardo, and Raikkonen, Grosjean, Verstappen. They've taken a grid penalty. Lucas Faber and Alexander Albon, Norris and Lee. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
So here we are then on the grid at Canada. Previous episode, of course, if you remember, we pretty much ballsed up qualifying. We're off the pace here, despite what we did in the practice sessions where we were comfortably midfield and we lined up in last place. It was only 3 thousandths off of Norris, but it's still last place on the grid. Our first 2 qualifying runs were severely hampered by the fact that I wasn't concentrating too much, kept on putting in a wall and damaging the wing, so we lost a lot of track time on the soft tyres. So then the 2-stop strategy, it looks like everyone's going to have to go 2-stop strategy. The tyre wear here is quite high. You can see there that soft medium is just over a second quicker than going hard medium. And we'll be starting on a fresh set of tyres as well. Obviously, we carry over a fresh set of mediums from qualifying as well. We'll start on the soft tyres because I do want to try and make some early progress if we can. And if we find that the first set of mediums are graining a bit too high, we can always pit for a set of hard tyres for a few extra laps towards the end. As for fuel, it is a bit of a guzzler here, so we'll put on 3 laps worth of fuel. That is the strategy that we'll run with. One-stop strategy I don't think is really possible here. So yeah, that's a 2-stop strategy. That's what we'll do. So we'll get the formation lap on the go.
We're not seeing any technical issues coming off the practice start. Watch the RPM on a full start. We don't want to bog down.
So this is a fairly unforgiving track, especially around sector 1 and sector 2. If you make a little mistake, you can find yourself quite easily in the wall. And we're going to be finding ourselves well within the pack early on. Don't know how many drivers are starting on the soft tyres. I reckon quite a few, to be honest, because there is no real difference between any of the strategies here in terms of race overall time. There will be a difference obviously during the race when people are running different tyre compounds at different wear rates, and you'll find some people going quick, others going slow. But I think most of the field will be starting on the soft tyres. Certainly Albon, Norris and ourselves at the very back of the field. The top 10 will all be on the soft tyres. I think there might be a few midfield runners starting on the mediums. But I think it's mostly going to be soft tyre running. I think most people might go soft, medium, so we could be on a similar strategy to everyone else around us. So we've got to try and recapture that progress and pace that we had in the practice sessions. And try to put the disappointment of qualifying behind us. Chance for a safety car or a virtual safety car is fairly high. If the AI start getting quite aggressive, because see some bits of carbon fibre spewing across the track. I like Canada as a track. I do struggle a little bit with sector 2. So coming down to the final chicane, the AI has already taken control, and we're going to be ghosting through Norris. So he'll pull over to the left hand side in a few seconds. We'll take up a grid spot. At least starting right at the very back, we can sort of gauge what's going to happen in the first couple of corners. It's going to be very busy, of course. So last car in position, which means we will only be on the grid for a few seconds before the lights come on. So the lights coming on now then. Round 7. And away we go now. We'll try and hang around the outside if we can. Okay, not a bad start.
We're looking good from the start.
Back a little bit, but we'll claw that back in the hairpin. So P17 then up behind Verstappen, who had a grid penalty. Clear behind. And that is lap 1 completed. That was a good move. Proud of that one.
Nice move. Good job.
So up behind Grosjean now. He's the first driver that we know of on the medium tyres. Oh, too much curb. We lose the position to rev up. Oh God, Albon.
Race officials have enabled DRS. DRS is now available.
Oh, good traction. Okay, this battling hasn't helped our progress. So you are catching these guys ahead of us. And we've got a new strategy option as well.
Confirmed.
We'll stick with pitting in at the end of lap 7. And these guys ahead are battling quite hard as well, so we are closing the gap. Whee!
Yellow flag.
And we were pulling away from the cars behind. They are scrapping quite a lot up ahead there.
We're approaching the pit window. You'll be on mediums.
And there was a yellow flag, so Hulkenberg's out of the race. Somewhere up here. There he is.
Green flag.
And we've overshot into the hairpin.
Okay, we lost the position. Try to keep focus.
Right, I'm here. He's the one of DRS though. So come down the back straight then to complete lap 6. We'll do another lap, but the soft tyres are starting to go off now. You can see our lap times are dropping a little bit as well, and we're falling back down the order.
We're going to box this lap. Push hard on the in lap.
So unfortunately we haven't really made the gains that I've wanted to. So we're now pit for the medium tyres. In we come then, so we'll put on a set of medium tyres, see how far we can take them. If we can take them up to about lap 20, 21, that'll be ideal for us going on the second set of mediums. So there's a couple of cars in the pits. We set a new personal best with 15.0. And looks like we've easily ahead of Norris. That's about it for now, but I'm waiting for Albon to make a pit stop. Oh, we've spun it! Wow!
What happened? Let me know you're okay.
So that was a disappointing way to end the race. I showed the replay there. I might do that from now on if I do crash out, just to see it from a different perspective what happened. Came into the chicane just a little bit too hot. The inside curb, we bounced over that a little bit. You can see the car bottom out over the curb, and you can also hear the revs sort of go up and down as well as I fight for traction. And when I put the power down on the curb, no rear downforce, spun the car around into the inside wall, and with a simulation damage I knew as soon as we spun we was going to be out of the race. So disappointing way to end the Canadian Grand Prix, but it wasn't looking like being a hot one anyway. Honestly, I'm completely confused. You see sometimes in F1 drivers like, yeah, we were really quick in FP1 and FP2, but the pace is just completely gone from then onwards. And it did. We were good in all 3 practice sessions, and then qualifying we bottled quite largely, to be honest. And in the race I thought initially we made a good start, gained a few positions, but we lost quite a bit of time, I think, from about lap 5 onwards, once the soft tyres started to give up a bit. We might have beaten a few people out there. We was ahead of Norris, and Albon still needed to pit, but it certainly wasn't going to be a classic race. Disappointing to retire though. I always want to finish the race even if I am plumb last, but you take the rough with the smooth and we move on to the next event. So Hamilton has won then, Vettel second, Charles Leclerc completes the podium, and Bottas, Gasly, Perez in the top 6, Magnussen, Verstappen with his recovery drive from 16th, Stroll picks up 2 points at his home race, and Sainz picks up the final point for McLaren. Outside of the points it's Webber, Butler, Raikkonen in 13th, Ricciardo, George Russell, who started in 10th place actually, Grosjean, Norris, Alexander Albon was a lap down, and then ourselves and Nico Hulkenberg, 2 early retirements. In the standings, Charles Leclerc still holds on to the lead, just 2 points ahead of Vettel. Bottas, Verstappen, Gasly complete the top 5. Then it's Perez, Ricciardo, ourselves, Norris. Where's Hamilton in this? Oh, he's in the top 5, sorry, yeah. Hamilton now into 5th, Gasly in 6th. We've dropped down to 9th. Perez has picked up a few points for himself. Other movers as well. Sainz with another point moves himself ahead of Butler. In the constructors, the only change is Force India getting ahead of McLaren. We're now starting to drop away from that sort of battle for 4th and 5th place and all that. We're now languishing down in 7th, just 2 points ahead behind of McLaren. But Ferrari lead then, 83 points ahead of Mercedes. Red Bull still 40 odd points behind them. Williams at the bottom, but they have 3 points.
Well, things didn't really go your way today. Let's have your take. That was a good race for Lucas. Are you pleased to see him doing well? Your car is looking a little beaten up. What happened out there today? You had a bit of a rivalry going on, but it looks like he bested you. Appreciate your time.
So the rivalry breakdown, we've lost this to Raikkonen, which is a shame. And George Russell has clawed back some of the early advantage we had. So yeah, we've lost our first rivalry to Raikkonen, which is very disappointing. We've lost quite a bit of respect there, but we're still, 3 points ahead of Russell, so we might be able to claw some of that back in the next couple of races. The resource points for the race as well will be down a little bit. Yeah, 137. Still though, we've got a healthy amount there. And you can see our reputation's gone down with everyone because we lost a rivalry and crashed out the race as well. So all the hard work we've done in the last couple of races has all been completely undone with that mistake in the race. Oh, that's a bit of a hit.
Commiserations on that result. It's been a tough weekend.
Yeah, it has. It started off well, it got better, then just completely went away from us when it mattered the most. But we've got 3 messages then. Debrief from Cole. Overall, the whole team is fairly disappointed with how this weekend has gone. Qualifying was frankly a bit of a mess, but we know the car is working okay, so we were optimistic about making good progress in the race. Unfortunately, that didn't happen either. Let's just take some extra time at the next race to work on a setup you're more confident with. We need to see improvements as both in single lap pace and on the long runs. And this is an interview transcript about Lucas Webber. Your former teammate had a rough time out there and wasn't able to finish. That's got to be frustrating for them. I can only imagine how they feel right now. It's hard when you see someone you know personally and have grown with throughout your career have such a bad time on the track. I'm hoping they can solve their issue sooner rather than later, and I look forward to seeing them back on their A game. And there's other questions there about himself, and then from Butler: how did you feel when you saw your old rival from F2 have to withdraw from today's race? I'm pretty disappointed, to be honest. My old rival is a skillful driver and I need as much competition as I can get. I'm hoping they solve all their issues soon so I can beat them in the next one. So then, driver profile, our value's taking a bit of a hit. Then after the next event, which I believe is France, we can go for a new contract renewal, so we really need a good performance at France to have our value as high as possible. It's still slightly higher than the contract value, so you might be able to tweak a few little things here, maybe get a bit more of a race bonus on there as well. We've also got a team goal that we still need to complete: qualify 15th or better. That has to be done at France now. If we fail to qualify 15th or higher in France, then we miss out on a nice little juicy 400 resource points. Research and development I'll come back to in a minute, but first we'll look at the vehicle management. Everything is seems to be okay. I've got no problems there. 34 laps, 5%. The gearbox size 16% after 2 of the 6 races. Of course, it's helped a little bit by retiring early in Canada. So research and development then. We know we've got this one coming in France, and we've got a lot of resource points here that we can spend. So I'm tempted to maybe get the powertrain and the chassis departments on the go, because it's going to take 2 weeks. So it'll be Austria when they come in, which means any resource points that we sort of pick up in France, we can probably spend on a bit of durability work. So I think it's probably the way we should go. Durability seems okay at the moment. We've already ordered brand new parts for all of the units, including the gearbox, at Monaco, so we don't have to worry about grid penalties now until possibly the last 4 or 5 races of the season, where we can just take 1 hit. So I don't think we need to focus too much on the durability for now, so we might as well get some of these other performance upgrades on the go then. So this is the cylinder head for the engine power. A redesigned cylinder head, less prone to pre-ignition of fuel, known as knock, means the engine can produce more controlled combustion, hence consistently achieving higher power output. That will come into the onto the car in Austria in 2 weeks' time, unless it fails. It's going to cost us just over $1,000, so that's fine. We can chuck that on the car, and we can slide over to the chassis department as well. So this is the rear floor under tray for the weight reduction department. Revisions to the design of the rear floor under tray result in a weight advantage with no compromise to strength or aerodynamic performance. Again, there is a chance it could fail, but if it doesn't, it will be on the car in Austria. And if we come out of this then and come out of this, all the upgrades, if you see in the bottom right, if it all does come in, it should get us ahead of McLaren and just on the back of Force India, which is quite nice as well. And if they do come, well, the aerodynamic department at the moment, once this comes in, will get us ahead of Williams. The chassis department in 2 weeks will get us ahead of McLaren, and the powertrain department will get us ahead, well, it should get us close to Mercedes actually, because it looks like that Force India and Williams have had no engine upgrades on their car. They might have had 1 or 2 here and there, because we've had a couple, but if they don't have any further upgrades as well, we could have the second quickest car in a straight line at least. But obviously more work needs to be done on both the chassis and the aerodynamic department. That's it then. There's nothing really else to talk about. We will go obviously to the next event as well. So disappointing overall. A weekend of 2 halves. Practice was good, consistent. We got purple in pretty much everything. I think we fluffed up the qualifying one. I think it was in FP3. I can't remember that far back. I've slept since then. And then qualifying was a complete failure, and the race was initially looking good, making some early progress, but we lost a lot of time before our pit stop, and then obviously pushing a bit too hard over the final chicane. Rather than spinning to the outside or going over the curve and hitting the wall on the outside, the wall of champions, I spun the car on the inside and hit the inside wall instead. But either way, as soon as I spun the car, I knew we was going to be out of the race. So overall, a fairly disappointing weekend, but we gained lots of resource points in the last couple of races, so hopefully we got some big upgrades coming as well, and we could focus on getting a good result at France to help our new contract renegotiation at the end of that episode. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one very soon.